Jenn Show.
Hello, good evening. This is Tim Ryan. Welcome to the Tim and Jenn Show. This is my amazing host and wife.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Jimenez Ryan.
What's happening? The country's freezing in many places that I don't live anymore.
No, today was like 68 in
68
California.
and sunny in California.
Like I took off my sweatshirt when I was walking today because it got hot. So it was like kind of cool. And I know it's like minus 30 some places.
I don't miss Chicago. I don't miss the East Coast right now.
Super Bowl just happened.
Had an interesting Super Bowl. Got to give kudos to the GOAT, Tom Brady.
He's a badass. He's like a crazy badass. I was not rooting for him. You and I were not rooting for the same team. And I was just like, damn it. Like, but he's like all-time great.
Yeah, it was amazing. But, and I don't watch much sports.
Yeah, and you won a bet with Kevin.
Yeah, Kevin from the Herren Project owes us dinner next time we see him. And he tried to flip it on me this morning. He's like, oh, you owe me dinner. Yeah. I said, no, I don't. I bet Tampa. You bet Kansas City. No, but then he gave in. So that's Kevin.
Was really impressed with The Weeknd. I so love him.
What are you talking
about?
The
halftime.
The Weeknd?
Yeah, The Weeknd.
Oh, that's the guy that performed?
Ay Dios, yes, babe.
Yeah, well, they should have had Metallica play.
No, wait, The Weeknd jammed.
Right.
He was amazing. You even said he was amazing.
It was good, but Metallica would have been much better.
The after party, so in Florida, like,
yeah,
hi, like, hello.
COVID spreader. But I don't care about that because we have actually,
I do care about that, by the way.
I know, I care about the COVID. We actually have a former NBA professional basketball player coming on to talk with us. But this gentleman, our guest coming on, I saw when I got out of prison, I was out of prison about 6 months and figuring out what I wanted to do. And I quit my job back in the technology space. And I just filed the paperwork to get my nonprofit going and started all these support groups. And a mutual friend of ours from Rosecrans Treatment Center had said, hey, this guy's speaking at Naperville North High School. You should really come with. And I'm not impressed by a lot of people, but it's the first time I heard a grown man who was a former, we'll get into his background, professional basketball player, get up and speak and be transparent and be vulnerable and speak his truth and not candy coat anything. And it's given me goosebumps now because after that, I saw him 6 months after that. And then he was up in Crystal Lake, Illinois at my hometown. And you know me, I'm a recruiter by trade. I try to get a hold of everyone. And I'd actually contacted his agent. We're going to try to meet afterwards, but there was a snowstorm and he got in late. So he says he probably didn't want to be pestered by Tim Ryan. But then we met 3-4 years ago and he's been a dear friend ever since.
And he's a two-time nominee.
Two-time Emmy nominated for one of his documentaries. He has 3 out there. But this is one of the OGs of the recovery movement. One of the people that has taken me under his wing and gave me guidance and direction, always takes my calls, and has become a friend and a brother out there. I'd like to welcome Chris Herren to the show. Chris, how are we?
I'm great. It's so good to see you. It's so good to be on with the two of you.
Hi, Chris. I'm like, I feel like I know you and I know that you guys talk, but it's so nice to meet you. And thank you for coming on our show. And I've been stalking you the last couple of nights, especially last night. I watched your Unguarded. And then I watched a few, your TED Talk and a bunch of other videos on like you. I have so much respect for on so many levels. Thank you for being transparent.
Thank you. And you as well, right? I mean, we talked about this today on our phone call, setting up this interview that, there's not many people that are willing to put it all out there. And, 12 years ago when I started doing it, I didn't know many people that were publicly speaking about heroin. And I was proud of, my recovery. And, it was almost, our past was almost the stigma that's attached to it. It's almost like a death sentence, even in recovery. Like, there's nothing left for you to do because you did the worst thing possible. And it was so far from the truth. And, you know, anytime I get a chance to talk with or spend time with people who are fighting the same fight and advocating for the same people, you know, it's a blessing.
It was amazing, you know, watching Unguarded last night. It really hit me. I felt like I connected with you on so many levels. Not only do we suffer from the same disease, but we kind of had, in different ways, the same growing up, like the pressures of growing up. Like, I really related to you being that 14-year-old self you and having the responsibilities of, like, you know, being this athlete and, like, you know, going to stardom and having to succeed. And yet you were, like, suffering and trying to be a kid, B, like, being thrown in that world. And I was like, my God, like, that's me. That was me too, you know? And yeah, like, you didn't know any better, but, like, you were everything movement you did was so publicized, you know? Like, I was getting mad while watching when they were, like, you know, taunting you or whatnot. I'm like, stop it. Like, I was just getting so upset and protective. And thank God you're here to tell the story. But you have an amazing wife. Heather's like a badass. I love her. And I don't know her, but I love her. And I love, like, your brother and just that whole dynamic that you have of family. And I'm such about family, you know, and I really felt you. How did you learn to heal from that? You know, that was a big thing for me.
You know, for me, it was, I was blessed with the gift of patience. You know, that contentment that recovery, you know, brings into your life. And, you know, I tell people all the time that, you know, there were so many nights that I laid in bed in early recovery, whether it was in a treatment center, a halfway house, a sober house, and I just wanted to fix it. I wanted to run back home and start life. And, you know, I was blessed to stay put. And, you know, I am very fortunate to be around a lot of old timers in recovery, and a guy that I really looked up to. I used to go to a men's group every Sunday, and, you know, he would always tell the newcomers to pray for a slow recovery. And, you know, I prayed for a slow recovery, and I was blessed to get one. So, you know, the healing process was slow. And I tell people all the time in my wellness center, like, you have to embrace monotony in recovery, right? Like, you have to cherish the monotony of hearing stories and similar stories and the same meetings and the same readings. And, you know, that embracing that early on allowed me to give myself the time to heal.
You know, it's interesting, Chris, because when I was, obviously I know you, but when you were out in Sacramento or Fresno, and they sent you to rehab in Utah, I went to rehab the first time at 21 years old. And just like, how did I get here? And I checked myself in and went through the motions, but I just wanted to quit doing coke. I wanted to figure out how to drink like a normal person. And, you know, went to meetings for 6 to 12 months and went right back to the same thing because I'm unique. I wasn't like these other people. And there's so many similarities in our journey in some of the aspects. What's it like? Do you still remember that first time in Utah in treatment? And in hindsight now, what would you have done different? Or was there anything that could have been done different?
You know, I think I do remember. I remember boarding the plane. I remember getting picked up at the airport. I remember walking into the center for the first time and, you know, being welcomed and greeted by the patients that were in that center. You know, the concept of living one day at a time is really hard to embrace at 21 years old. You know, I do think that there was multiple layers to myself that that needed to be addressed and was not going to be fixed in 28 days. You know, I don't know who the person is or the insurance company or whoever unfortunately put a finish line on recovery. Like who determined that 5 days is detox, and who determines that 28 days is a treatment program? And, it's at 21 years old, I needed more time than 28 days. I tell people all the time at my wellness center that I don't meet the real person until probably day 22.
Exactly.
Like all of a sudden they're honest, they're comfortable, they're willing to be transparent. I was very guarded at 21 years old. I was living this life of, I wouldn't say stardom by any stretch, but, it was in the spotlight. And part of me wanted to protect some of that. And I didn't really know how to talk about it at that time. So at 21 years old, 28 days wasn't enough. And in hindsight, if I look back on it, I would have signed myself up for maybe 6 months.
Right. So I want to take a step back though, just for the people that are listening to this that might not know who Chris Herren is. Google his name, but Chris was an all-star basketball player from Fall River, Massachusetts. And for being 6'2", not many people go on from that. I mean, I'm 6'1.5", and I look at some of these giants, Dennis Rodman's a friend of ours, and you see that guy, and my neck hurts from looking up at him. But then you went from there to Boston College.
Yep.
Boston College, that lasted 4 months. Then you ended up out in California, got a second chance. But unfortunately, this thing called addiction had kicked in, and you failed a drug test in California. They sent you to rehab. You came back.
Denver Nuggets?
Yeah, I wasn't getting that far yet. We were kind of there. I'm talking slow.
Yeah.
Now, let me ask you.
Listen, it's very obvious who the pro is.
I'm like...
I was going to get to a point. I was going to say, was that gentleman Kevin Michael Asik living with you out in California when you went to rehab?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Kevin moved out to Fresno in my sophomore year.
Now, Kevin is now the executive director of the Herren Project, and we'll talk about all those things towards the end of the show. But Kevin's probably your best friend and has been your running mate since you guys were little kids.
Yeah, so Kevin and I met. I was probably 5 and he was 6. I guess I was giving him a tough time on the schoolyard, and and he went home and told his father that a kid at school was bullying him, and when his father came to my house to knock on the door, his father found out that I was a grade below him. He thought he was walking into a 5th grader. And Kevin and I have been soulmates, soulmates ever since. We've experienced life together, then life on life's terms together. If it wasn't for him, I don't think I'd really be doing this interview. He quietly showed the way. He wasn't forceful about my recovery. He was a man of action and attraction. And I thankfully became very attracted to what he had in his recovery.
So he ended up getting sober before you. But it's interesting. Go ahead, Jen.
You didn't finish the rest of his career, babe.
Well, I wanted to have story first. Okay, then you ended up going, got 2nd round pick to the Denver Nuggets.
Yep.
Pretty damn exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Played a year at the Denver Nuggets and then get traded to the Boston Celtics.
Correct.
I mean, now talk about this. I mean, that's like me being from Chicago if I played pro hockey, the Blackhawks or the Bulls, to get signed with the Celtics. What was that like?
It was very uneventful. It was not a joyous moment for me. I was early into my struggle with OxyContin. I knew that it was going to be unbelievably challenging to manage my addiction with everyone who knows me with a front row seat. You know, being in Denver, you know, I could hide. Being in Boston, I couldn't. And, you know, the lengths we go, and the risk we take, you know, someone was going to see me in a parking lot somewhere. And, you know, it was just, it wasn't a moment that I look back on joy. It was somewhat sad.
Oh,
you know?
yeah.
It was sad that this childhood dream was coming true, and I was living this nightmare, and I wasn't able to appreciate it.
Gosh, I so
Sounds
relate
like
to
you, Jennifer.
I mean, and then afterwards you went to like Bologna, which I've been to, but you went to Iran and all these other places in around the world playing. And like when you were talking about that in your documentary, I was like, damn, I know I got drunk, I got drugs in Bologna. I know in Milan, I know, and I also did my welcome there, and it was Paris, and it was this, and it was like I so related to you on that, and you know, trying to yet protect yourself, that 21-year-old self of yours, and you know, I mean, you were a superstar, and you were the poster that you were looking at when you were a child. Like I remember going to my dad and saying, I'm going to be on the cover of that. And I was like 5 or 6 years old and it was cover of American Idol. I happened to have been on the cover of that. And like, I'm battling this disease and I'm hitting, you know, my highest like achievements, and I'm trying to hide from the world. Like in my disease, like there's like no fulfillment in what I'm doing. And it's like, I so get that. And I feel that we were talking about this earlier. It's like when I got sober, like I didn't know how to even forward emails. Like I didn't know how to do these, and not because I'm stupid, just because I had other people do them for me. And there's so many things I had to learn again. And I think that a lot of times people in addiction, they beat themselves up for not being able to do what they think is norm, you know, because they've been so sedated. And sometimes when people are at the peak of their careers, you know, or what society tells them career and peak is, they feel so ashamed and like so not wanting that, you know, and it's kind of like a fear of being successful. But no, it's not that. I'm just so in my disease that I don't even know how to celebrate what I have.
You live to use and use to live. And the one thing that hit me is when you talked about coming back and you're back at the river, and your buddy called you and said, I got 4 bags of heroin, and you hopped in your car and you drove over and shot up the 4 bags and you drove and you overdosed 2 miles later in a cemetery and woke up with an officer, you know, or whatever, breaking the window and EMTs having to revive you because you were dead on the scene, and hospital to jail. And that was my second to last overdose. I happened to do this. I can remember shooting up in the McDonald's and driving, and it went dark, and next thing I wake up getting hit by Narcan 5 times because I'd overdosed and hit 2 cars and put 4 people in the hospital. And that's where this takes us.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Chris, I have a question to ask you. So like here you are, you get sober, and then all of a sudden, like you started speaking really early in your recovery. I feel and yet another connection with you. Like I didn't know that I was going to be thrown in this world of recovery, right? By doing the shows. I was 2.5 years sober, then I'd come back out. Like, how did that feel for you? Like starting to speak and like kind of getting this niche going at what year? A year sober or 8 months?
Yeah, probably like a year and a half sober. You know, an article in the paper, in the Boston newspaper that I had just gotten sober, and a teacher, a local teacher, called me and she said, I would love for you to speak to my class. And I didn't have a license. My license had been taken away. She said, I'll pick you up and I'll bring you to school and I'll drop you back off. And, you know, I went there and she gave me a Dunkin' Donuts gift card for speaking. And she called me the next day and said, I have 7 more classes for you to present to. Would you be interested? And, you know, I went back and earned some Dunkin' Donuts gift cards. And you know, speaking is very, you can have speakers bureaus and you can have agents, but, to me, it's all word of mouth. It's a word of mouth type of business. It's a referral based business. And, a couple of local high schools started picking it up. And, I went in and I told this very graphic, transparent, raw, vulnerable story. And about 5 years into it, I said to myself, there's a part of me that feels like I'm playing into the stigma, because I'm putting so much emphasis on the worst day and not discussing the first day. Like when it comes to addiction, we drive from, the point of how ugly it is in the end, rather than recognizing and talking about why it began.
Exactly.
And that's when I shifted my talks on, and based it more around education and prevention and social and emotional health and esteem and confidence. So, for the first 4 years, it was very, it was like experience, strength, and hope. I walked into a high school and I did my experience, strength, and hope. And then at about year 4, year 5, I transitioned out of that. I still tell that, but just in a different forum. If I do a community, oftentimes I'll do a high school in the day and I'll do the community at night. And the community is my story. It is, I'll never get away from telling it, because I believe that, people in recovery have a responsibility to share. And, so I've been very fortunate to be doing it for the last 11 years, 10 years. I had no idea what I was getting into. It wasn't planned. So to be here 11 years later and still doing it is pretty special.
So coming into last year, Jennifer and I, when we got together and fell in love, and how could you not? We shifted more to speaking, now working in treatment and doing interventions. Coming into last year, we had 85 events booked, some big events too. COVID hit, shut everything down. And we revamped, but it shut your world down too. Two-folded question. A, are you starting, I know we can do Zoom talks and that. Do you see anything opening up, but how do you think this is affecting the kids today? How do you think this is affecting the youth of America?
So I just spoke in South Carolina last week, and the week before I was in Jacksonville, live with kids.
Awesome.
Yeah, so, it definitely, my work stopped immediately. Also I believe that God has a plan, and for me, it gave me an opportunity to kind of reset, and focus a lot of my energy towards Heron Wellness, which I had just started. So to be able to go back into early recovery and witness the miracles, it just allowed me to get a new perspective. So, do I think it's going to have unbelievable impact? I think there's kids out there that school was a refuge. It was a place where they were fed, where they got a break from home. There's kids out there that, need that connection and are no longer getting it. I think the ripple effect is going to be tremendous. Mm-hmm. And sadly, I don't know how much we're prepared for it or investing in it. As speaking in schools, I don't know what the national average is, right? We could probably look that up, but, I speak in schools, public schools all across America that, they'll have one guidance counselor for 800 students.
Yes.
How can you put 800 students, teenagers on one person's desk? And I think there's going to be so much more of that. I think the kids are going to go back with some serious needs.
There's only 2 high schools in the country, one in Long Island, New York, and the last school we were at, Shelbyville, Indiana. the only two schools out of thousands that we've been to that had a full-time mental health counselor and a full-time substance abuse counselor on staff.
Yeah.
Only schools, because, I know your team preps prior to coming in, but it's like, look, these talks that we do, that you do, Jennifer and I do, you're going to stir up emotions with these kids, and they might not be struggling, but they're coming from that home with trauma, and mom and dad's an alcoholic or whatever the variable. They need people to talk to, and the schools, they don't know what to do. I mean, go ahead.
No, I mean, I just feel that like what you're saying about that is that, as a child, I don't remember people like us coming in and speaking. I think that they were like either a lot older or like it was just, I don't remember it at all. But if I heard you speak at my school, if I go back into my childhood, self, like my 14, 13, 12-year-old child, and you're talking about the things that you talk about that I'm experiencing at home, like no one's given me an ability to use my voice or to even share. Like I was thinking about that with what you were talking about and the things that I've seen of yours, is that like as a child I was not allowed to talk. Like it just smile, go to school, act like everything's okay, like nothing happened here. Someone didn't try to just commit suicide in my house, or dad was gone for a few days and I'm cleaning up his house, like like I didn't find bags of cocaine, like that didn't happen. It did, and I had to hold it in. Like I wasn't. And then being thrown in the world that I was thrown in, like, oh, I was sexually assaulted. Like, that didn't happen. Can't tell anyone about it, and it's like you're suppressing. So hearing voices like both yours and yours, I would be like, how do I even connect to them to share with them? Well, does that make sense?
And we're going to get into that a little bit later. I want to hit on some of the detailed things that the Herren Project is doing, because once people hear, they're going to be blown away. There's Chris, you have mastered not only speaking and presenting to Wall Street, to professional athletes, to Yale, to Harvard, to Princeton, to the South Side of Chicago high school or middle school, but you've nailed it with Heron Wellness and you've nailed it with the Herren Project. And I commend you for it, because no one's doing what you're doing. And I thank you for that. And I'm really excited to get you out there. But something I want to ask you about, tell us about Phoebe and Ryan.
Really?
Yep.
So.
The reason I'm asking this, Chris, is people always see a picture or you're speaking and all this glorious stuff. They don't see what happens behind the scenes when a baby comes up to you at an event. If you mind sharing this story.
Yeah. So, I mean, listen, I have countless reasons to continue. To be inspired. What I've been given, the responsibility to present, but also the opportunity to listen. The emails that we've received at the Herren Project, to touch on what Jennifer said, your goal as a presenter and educator is obviously to teach, but it's to connect. And for me, it's to create a voice, right? To empower some little girl to not keep the secret, to leave the gym and say, life is not good for me. And although I come to school every day and I sit in your classroom and I do the work that you give me, I'm not well, or my parents aren't well. The kids that I have hugged, and then to find out months later that they've ended their life due to mental health and depression. The kids that have rolled up their sleeves and showed me all the scars and the self-harm, that's the stuff that has given me the ability and the strength to do this as much as I've done. I'll never forget it. I was speaking in Pennsylvania, and it was a cold night in the middle of nowhere. And halfway through my talk, the door opens, and I am standing down in the pit. And, there's not a lot of people there. It's probably 15 degrees, there's ice and snow. And I see this little kid walking down the aisle. And I'm waiting for him to take a left or right to get into a row with a parent, but he doesn't. He comes right to me and he sits down right in front of me. And I realize this kid has no shoes on. And I'm like, huh. And as I'm watching this little boy with no shoes, I'm thinking I just came in here 35 minutes ago and it was freezing. Long story short, after I presented, that little boy said to me, I saw on the news that you were here, and my mom and dad are home right now on drugs. And I wonder if you can come and speak to them. He said, they'll never make it here, but I want you to come with me. I want to take you home. So it's those stories, the Ryans, the Phoebes, the little boy, and it's just countless, right? You've seen it, I've seen it, Jennifer's seen it. It's given us a perspective. A perspective of gratitude and a responsibility that a lot of people don't get, right? Every time I walk into a school, that school is putting their trust in me to deliver to their students. And the fact that I'm only there once, that's a lot of responsibility. And I don't take that lightly. And when I first started speaking, I told my story, and then I started hearing theirs. And, we had similar stories, me and a lot of these kids. So the Herren Project, I just felt a responsibility to take responsibility to provide a place where these kids can go. And the Herren Project has, done that and then some to these children.
Wow.
I mean, that concept, though, of having to see and experience and witness all this stuff and then see reflections of yourself within those kids and the parents and whatnot, and to assemble what you've assembled is amazing. I thank you for it.
Yeah.
When you talk about recovery, instead of talking constantly about the dark days, but I think with the dark days, we have these days, right? The light days, the days I can look, just people straight in the face, not up, not down, just I'm good with just okay at times. For me though, it's been a struggle. It took 5 years, not 6 months, not 30 days, 5 years. My first 5 years, I always had people. I was unemployable for 2.5, and then I get sober house, my first job, right? But I applied to Target and Starbucks, and I didn't get those jobs. But then I get these jobs, and I'm back. I'm doing these shows, and then I get pulled back, and I come back to all recovery. As you're getting better, I heard you say last in the thing I saw that you couldn't look at yourself in the mirror and shave, right?
Or brush
your teeth. I would look in my modeling days and my active using days. I'm doing Victoria's Secrets. I'm looking in the mirror and I see an elephant man, and I'm barely hanging on to things. Haven't eaten in 5 days, and I see the worst thing possible. Yeah. I was I can't believe that he said that. And what would you see when you looked in the mirror?
I wasn't going to see it. I didn't want it, because the mirror, if you really want to know how you feel about yourself, just take a minute and stare. And I think, the mirror will give you some answers, right? And, shaving and brushing my teeth in the shower became a forced habit. It was a level of self-care, kind of. You know, like I'm gonna protect myself from pain. So, you know, I'll brush my teeth and shave in the shower. And, you know, when I said that, I didn't realize in the documentary how many people would identify, you know, and not like I knew in the addiction world, in the recovery world, a lot of people would. I didn't know how many people that weren't impacted by drugs or alcohol that shave and brush their teeth in the shower. So, you know, ultimately, you know, I sit here 12 and a half years sober, right? Coming up on 13, God willing. But I still have a tough time shaving and brushing my teeth in the mirror. Like, recovery has not prevented me from some days shaving and brushing my teeth in the shower, right? Like that's the ultimate, you know, yes, we are sober, but yes, we will have moments of insecurity, and self-worth and self-esteem will be challenged. And, you know, fortunately, I've created, you know, a infrastructure, right, of recovery that has given me the ability to tell people I feel ugly today. You know, like I just don't, like you said, you're okay with being okay. Not great, not good, I'm just okay today. And that level of contentment that recovery has given us. But shaving and brushing my teeth in the shower is something occasionally that I still do. And it will be a challenge for life for me. So, you know, this is it's a beautiful journey that, you know, that we've been given. And I think perspective in recovery is unbelievably important. And, you know, that level of awareness of who I am and where I'm at, you know, the mirror, I'm in the beautiful Hampton Inn in Warrenton, Virginia. And you know, there's a mirror right in front of me right now. So you've been in plenty of Hampton Inns.
Oh, and she'll clean, and it's a whole ordeal traveling with her. The thing though, Chris, that's really badass about you is that you're 12 and a half years sober, but you're still vulnerable. And you talk about it because you empower me. You know, Jennifer, bless her soul, you know, to fall in love with me is one thing, to marry me is another, to live with me, start a business. We're together 24/7. I mean, I'm not the easiest person to live with. But she got me to start talking to a therapist.
We see a therapist together.
We see a therapist together. I see them individually. But boy, has it been a fucking game changer. I mean, it's really been a game changer. And then having COVID and this whole thing, I got the COVID 20 where I put on 20 pounds, and being 52, yeah, I got up to 221. I couldn't lose it. And I went on this carnivore diet. And yesterday I was at 205. And Christ, I feel better. And I'm banging out push-ups, and I go to my buddy's boxing gym and box twice a week. And she did this mud grass dirt diet and has lost a bunch of weight. But we can talk about it too.
Yeah, I mean, and I love that you talk about some days, you know, you got to shower and shave and not look in the mirror. Like last night said to him, I'm like, babe, I've dealt with a lot of issues. I've you know, dealt, and some come up, and I'm digging even deeper. But I said, babe, this whole aging thing for a girl that it was all about her outsides.
Totally.
It's getting to me, and he's like, you're fine, you know. And I'm like, oh God, I know I won't be able. I can talk to my girls, right, that are in recovery, but some days I can't look in the mirror, right? And I was taught I couldn't, for the first year, I couldn't look in the mirror but for 5 minutes to brush my teeth because it was about outside stuff I was dealing with and you know, I had to dig deep inside. Then they were like, now we want you to say, I love you to you in the mirror. And I'm like, what? For 3 weeks. And then I couldn't do it. Like, I love you, Jen. I love you, Jenny. Like, and all this stuff, this healing, right? And that stuff is really hard to do. So when I am in a place where I'm uncomfortable with myself or, you know, when I'm uncomfortable with inside me, I start going, I love you, Jenny. And then sometimes I just don't even look in the mirror and just say, I love you, Jenny, you're enough. And I let the little girl inside, you know, heal. But some days I can't look in the mirror. And I couldn't, for the first year, I couldn't look in the mirror but for 5 minutes to brush my teeth because it was about outside stuff I was dealing with and you know, I had to dig deep inside. Then they were like, now we want you to say, I love you to you. And I'm like, what? For 3 weeks. And now I'm having to, when I got sober, it was all about like, you're a drunk, you know, this, you like, you know, powerless, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, what about my other things like eating disorders and traumas and this and that? And that came later. Have you, were you able to do all that right away? Like deal with all, or were you just like the 12-step space?
Right. I think I dove pretty quick. You know, whether or not it's responsible, right, to dive so quickly, I don't think so. You know, I think we have to be very gentle and careful. You know, and people will balk at this. You know, it's like having people, you know, do a very deep dive fourth step, you know, by 3 months sober. Like, you know, are sponsors really equipped to like hear someone talk about, you know, molestation and rape and sexual trauma? And, you know, like you have to be very careful what you ask people to disclose and to talk about. I dove pretty quickly. I think it was irresponsible in hindsight for me. You know, writing a book at a year sober, you know, and that's a pretty long fourth step. And, you know, in hindsight, I would never do it over again. I'm blessed to come out of that unscathed, you know, because there were many days after talking with the author and myself, going home and just exhausted, you know, and not even knowing where to go with it, you know, and then, you know, you're worrying about like, I'm saying all this and people are about to hear it, you know, and it's going to be hurtful for some people who love me, you know, and worrying about my children. And, you know, we've been such a public family in recovery, you know, like Christopher was 11 when the book came out. He was 11 when Unguarded came out. You know, I was speaking in schools, you know, the whole time he was in middle school and high school. So, you know, I pulled them into this recovery world with me. And it wasn't easy. And, you know, it wasn't easy to pull them into it. And it wasn't easy to dive deep and talk about some things that I talked about publicly. But, you know, the reality is every night I went to bed and I contemplated pulling out a story from the book or from Unguarded. And then it was, what if that's the story someone needed? And so I kept it all, and I just let it rip, and I'm grateful.
You know, it's ironic because when I got out of, I can remember the day I walked out of prison. I put a huge post on Facebook and let everyone know, look, I struggled with addiction. I'm now 13 and a half months sober. And in my own selfish way, I put it out there for accountability because everyone thought I'm going to fail again. And then 8 months later, my son dies on my 21-month sobriety date. And everyone's like, oh, he's going to relapse. And I didn't. But in hindsight, there's so many things. No, I wouldn't have started a nonprofit, you know, 6 months out of prison. I would have started the support groups, but God took me down this road. But the thing is, I was 44 years old. I had business experience. I had good people in my corner. But I look at your experiences now to where you are. You have, at what, 3 years sober, you started Herren Project?
Yeah.
So now you're 12 and a half years sober. And I want to get into the Heron Project, but you also have Heron Wellness. What is Heron Wellness?
You know, the Heron Wellness was just something that I always dreamt of. All right. And as a man in recovery, I wanted to kind of give back. Right. I was given this unbelievable gift. Someone thought enough of me to offer me a gift to go to treatment. And I took it, and it changed the trajectory of not only my life, but my family's. And it was so powerful and meaningful for me. I wanted to be the person who offered that. And that's where the Herren Project came in. And providing people with scholarships, assisting them with sober living. And the Herren Project is so much more than that. And we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
But Heron Wellness was just, it was my vision of how people should be treated. You know, I think there's multiple paths to recovery. I think recovery should be lengthier, longer stays. You know, I wanted to provide holistic care. You know, I wanted to assist people in their detox, in their withdrawal and early recovery with acupuncture and mindfulness and breathing and meditation. I wanted to have a trainer on site to make people feel better about themselves and push them. So to have a nutritionist and a trainer with them every day. You know, and then to have life coaches, you know, who are therapists, but I like life coaches, you know, who focus on a facet of life, not just on, you know, the drugs they did, the money they spent, the people they hurt, the hearts they broke. You know, it focuses on their finance, their education, their personal life, their relationships. So Heron Wellness for me is to create culture that people are attracted to create unbelievable connections that people want to develop a responsibility for. You know, so when I started it, you know, people said, well, why don't you open up a big one, like 80 to 120 beds? And I wanted to keep it intimate, and I wanted to keep it small. I wanted people to feel like they were heard, and that story mattered. So we have 24 people at both locations, you know, one in Mass and one in Virginia. And, you know, as I told them tonight, as I sat in a group on gratitude, you know, that, you know, their stories matter, and it's a privilege to be on the other side of someone who's willing to be transparent and vulnerable and share it. So Heron Wellness has been operating for 3 years. We're coming up on our 3rd year anniversary, and it's just a dream come true.
And it's beautiful. Like if God forbid anything were to happen, your treatment center is the well center is where I want to go. Like we didn't
Totally.
have that where I went at all.
And I've been.
I went to a poshy place. We didn't even have a pool or gym.
I've been to Heron Wellness in Massachusetts, and I will tell you, I'm not saying this because we're interviewing Chris right now. I've probably been to 2 or 3 magical programs in the United States, and by far this is one of the most magical places I've ever seen, because I work in the treatment space and I have for 6-7 years, and I'm disgusted by it. I'm disgusted how people are an insurance policy and you only sorted for 18 days and you're out. What? 18 days the person's been using for 30 years. Well, they've got an HMO insurance policy. But to see the love, the care, the compassion, and you call them guests. They're not clients. They're a guest. They are a guest at our wellness center. And it's just magical. Yeah. And it does get me emotional, because I like to see people treated with dignity and respect, and have the opportunity to truly grasp this life we live today. Yeah, we got sober. Yeah, we do the 12 steps. Guess what, man? There's so much fucking more to it. I got a life beyond my wildest dreams. I mean, if you had asked me 7 years ago, sitting in the Illinois Department of Corrections, R68915, would I be living in Beverly Hills, California, married to a supermodel actress, talking to one of my dear friends, a former NBA basketball player, Chris Herren? No, I didn't think that would happen. But why? Because I got out of my own way.
Yeah.
So that's Heron Wellness. You want to jump in?
I do. I want to ask you a couple of questions, since you have almost 13 years. So for me, 5 They didn't tell me I was going to start all over again, which I did. Big year for me. 7, lucky 7. 10, almost nervous breakdown. 13, lucky year. I met my husband too at 13. What are the pivotal years for you and why?
Year 1 was my favorite. I was just something that I didn't believe was attainable. It was just such a moment for me. It was like a moment where I started to believe.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when I put 365 days together, it was like, wow, I started to believe in myself. I think Drew, and my son, who's 12, my sobriety date is very close to his date of birth. And, he's my little sober baby. He's never seen his dad under the influence, and I'm truly blessed for that. And I tell the story all the time. Drew was never a Spider-Man kid. He was never a Hulk kid. Batman. He was Santa Claus. Drew was Santa Claus year round. As from the age of, I have pictures of him on my Instagram. He was Santa Claus from age 2 to 6. And I think recovery gave him this perspective of life that every day was Christmas.
Wow.
And as weird as it became, right? Like I would be throwing away Santa Claus beards in the summertime. I walked into my house one day and I just saw this little boy sitting on the couch in a Santa outfit watching TV. And it just hit me, that recovery has given him so much peace and contentment and happiness that, you can be Santa Claus every day.
So I love that analogy.
Yeah. And so, this year has been challenging. COVID is mean, right? It put us in very uncomfortable positions, right? Like I'm a high fiver, I'm a hugger. Like I want to hold you, I want to hug you, I want to high five you. Like I need that in my life. And I'm fortunate that, Heron Wellness, I was able to get some of that. But I'm a big guy. I'm about connection, and COVID stripped us of that. And so year 12 has been probably one of my hardest years with COVID. But so many pivotal moments in my recovery. So many moments that year 5 I was like, that's super cool. Like 5 years, right? A nickel. And then to hit a decade, have 10. But I've had so many great mentors. I've had so many, like I just told the guest at Heron Wellness, one of the most favorite people I've ever met in recovery, he celebrated 25 years twice.
Wow.
That's a boss.
Heck yeah.
25 years twice. And I watched him celebrate his second 25th.
That's
sort of hear his story is pretty cool.
That's amazing. That is amazing.
So what do you do for self-care? And not just like COVID, because I had to stop and because you're always on the go. Like I know you're on planes.
Because you've got Heron Talks, you've got Herren Wellness, you've got the Herren Project, you have Heather, you have the kids. What do you do?
You have Kevin.
Totally.
What do you do for you, Chris?
Okay. So I drove 8 hours to Penn State University this weekend with my little boy, who's a basketball player, right? He's playing in this big time tournament for kids his age, 6th grade. And to be able to drive 8 hours with your child is something that I don't take for granted, because there was a time in my life I wouldn't drive an hour away from my home. And people who use the drugs I use can identify with that. And when I was there, I was watching, as a dad, watching my little boy, you know, dribble up and down, play at a very high level. And we walk into a game, and the center that he's playing against, he's 6'5", and he's 280 pounds.
Wow.
And he's in 6th grade.
Wow.
And I took a picture of him before the game, and like my son next to him, right? And with 2 minutes left in the game, I see my little boy lined up on the free throw line, and the big guy takes one step into the paint. He grabs his chest and he goes face first into the ground.
Wow.
And next thing I know, they're cutting his clothes off, and they're doing the defib on him right on the basketball court. And I'm listening to his mother scream, and I'm watching from across the gym my son start to like cry and get emotional. And I run over and I grab him and I grab his teammates and I move them away from seeing this visual. But as a father, as a dad, you know, sobriety gave me the ability to protect him and hug him and hold him and cry with him after the game in the car. We both cried. And he wanted to know if the boy lived or died. And, you know, as I went to bed that night in another Hampton in Happy Valley, I watched him sleep. And the last thought on my mind before I fell asleep that night was like, just thank God I'm sober.
Wow.
You know, like, thank God that I have the ability today to cry with him, hug him, hold him, and watch him sleep, and be there for him when he wakes up. So, you know, that's, it was a moment that I had this weekend. That's what I did. My self-care is I can admittedly say it's lacking. You know, I'm not good at balance. You know, my wife and I, we talk about this often, that we give so much and yet we sometimes don't give enough to ourselves.
Sounds like someone I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I need to be better. So it's like a meeting. I just raised my hand and said out loud that I need to be better at self-care and focusing on myself more. But, you know, helping others and being part of people's journey is something that has given me so much, and I don't want to lose sight of that either.
So I think we should plan a trip to Hawaii, you and Heather and Jennifer and I. Let's go spend 10 days and do some downtime. What do you want? Because I want to lead into something.
I know. I feel you on that. Like, and Tim was like, I was like, hello, honey, do you have any like boundaries in self-care? And what about you? When I first met him, and I always said,
Sure.
like, him, I need not a thing from him. Like, I was my own independent person, but I chose to be with him. And therefore I have a lot of people around me. Like, I always say shit falls down, you know, downhill. So like, I have like a tough spot, like my sponsor, the women and friends in my life, like they'll be like, what are you doing for you? What are you doing for you? And I have kind of, it's like indented in me that they say, what are you doing for self-care for you? And I always say, if I'm way too dragged down, I have not one thing to give anyone, and I have to be really conscious of that.
Sure.
So I'll have him text you every day. So
Yeah, we need to have more calls. But I want to lead in, and we can kind of wrap up with this. So, because
no, I have to wrap up.
You want to fight?
You want to.
What you were saying, you know, that you're there for your son, and I'm sorry you guys had to experience that, but there's a lesson in there, and that you were there and you were present. It's so amazing. But I want people don't understand the amount of work the Herren Project, which is your nonprofit arm, that Kevin is the executive director of. But when I was out there 2.5 years ago, and I was up at the Heron Wellness and then spent a week at Kevin's house, it seemed like. But we went and sat, and he took me to the Heron office, and he starts, besides giving me a ton of free swag, we need some updated stuff, thank you very much. He was showing me your computer system, and he said, Tim, basically when Chris goes into a high school to speak, we give out a website, and the kids can go to that website. And they can say, hey, I'm struggling with depression, this, I self-harm, I'm an alcoholic, my parents are, I want to kill myself. And you have a team of people that are full-time employees, ology people, psychology, psychologists, that then interact with these people and escalate it to the school if possible, find them help and resources. I was blown away. I don't think many people know the depths. And then outside of that, all the online support groups that the Herren Project runs, and the runs to raise money. I mean, this is a well-oiled machine, Chris, and kudos to you. You've done it right, and you're doing it right.
You're making a huge.
I'm surrounded by the right people.
Yes.
Right? I'm very fortunate that, as an athlete, I always wanted to play with the best. I always wanted to be pushed to be with the best. Compete with the best. And I am very competitive in my recovery. I want to be in the best meetings with the best people, the people who I like to listen to and share, the people who empower me and encourage me. And, I'm competitive in that facet of my life as well. And, Kevin has taken this, and he's built it and to a level that is only he can talk about, right? Like, I had the concept, I knew what I wanted, I knew what I wanted to be part of. Kevin took it and put his name on it. The love, the time, the energy he put into that is remarkable. And I'm very fortunate that my name is attached to it, because he's just done such an unbelievable job with it. And, we started with 3 people, 2-3 people, and now we're up to probably 20-something employees. To walk into a school and present, I wanted someone on the back end to listen. Those emails are flagged, color-coded. If anything comes in, where we believe self-harm could be possible, we react and we respond accordingly. The clinicians, the licensed social workers that are on staff, that's what they live for. That's their purpose. The family support groups, I believe we have 19 a week. The scholarships we give and the connections with other treatment centers. It's amazing. It's something that, like you just said, if you would have told me I was in Beverly Hills, if I was married to a model, if you told me 14 years ago that this could all be possible, it would have been a fairy tale. And, I would have said it's Walt Disney. But this fairy tale has come true because I believe that, I have people that just love recovery, and that's why, the recovery community can be very judgmental.
Yes.
Oh, you don't say.
Oh,
shit.
Yeah. They can be very judgmental. And, that's why I adore you, and I adore you, and, the time that we've spent together, and I know who you are in your soul, and it's the Novaks of the world, myself, you, and so many others, your wife, and so many others who go out there and want to shed a different light on the suffering, and want to share our recovery and our fairy tale. to let people know that their fairy tale is possible. And no matter how low that life brings us, you know, there's always a bridge.
Amen.
You know?
That's powerful.
Yeah.
Powerful.
It is very powerful. I have two things to ask
Sure.
you. One, did you go into a hotel room like a year ago and there's a cutout of Tim and I?
Yes, there was.
I couldn't believe that. I laughed.
That
I
was a
saw
year
the
and
photo.
2. Yeah. Okay,
Or
good.
A year and a half
Good.
ago.
That worked out.
I just thought about that.
I forgot about that.
That's a good one.
What did you do with the cutout?
The cutout stayed in the hotel room. No, I think Kevin.
They
I
sent
think
me
Kevin
a
took
photo of it.
Yeah.
That's
really funny. What would you now in this moment
Yes.
tell your 14-year-old self?
So I have every guest at Heron Wellness write note to self. I did it for the morning show with Gail King. And when they called me for that assignment, you know, they said 500 words. And you read it on camera. And, you know, I said, listen, I speak for an hour. I wrote a book. 500 words is easy. It was probably the hardest thing I've done in my recovery is write a note to that little boy, to give that little kid what he needed. And so it's still hard to say what I would say. You know, to be gentle, to cry, to let people know the real you. You know, I guess, you know, it's going to be okay. You know, it's going to be okay. And thank God. I love both of you. I can't wait to meet you, Jennifer, in person.
We will be seeing you very soon. Chris, we love you. We want to thank you for coming on the show. But if people want to, you know, check out the Herren Project, Heron Wellness, Herren Talks, there is a plethora of opportunities. Just Google Chris Herren's name to find everything. If you haven't watched Unguarded, nominated for 2 Emmys, his 30 for 30, the first day, please.
Social media handle.
So what Instagram?
So you already asked me this, so I don't even know what my Instagram. I think it's C_Herren. And Facebook.
No, I asked you about Twitter.
Yeah, I know, and I forgot my password, so I can't get in.
So you can find them on Facebook. You can find them on Instagram.
Yeah.
And if you need to find us, dopetohope.com. If you need help, 844-611-HOPE. We can guide you to the Herren Project, to Heron Wellness. But Chris, thank you, my brother,
Thank you
our
so
friend,
much.
our soul brother.
You are
recovery.
amazing, like mind-blowing, and I'm in awe of you, and I really thank you. I thank you for getting sober and becoming your full self. I mean, I feel you're such a huge success
Thank
now
you.
than ever before. I also want to thank Lux Media.
Thank you, Lux Media, for the platform.
And everyone listening, please be good to yourself. Thank you, guys.
Thanks,
Chris.
Chris, thank you for being a friend. We love you. Have an amazing night. I want to talk to you about Clean Cause, better caffeine. What's in the can? Our organic, sparkling Herba Mate is a premium pick-me-up that won't let you down. Every can of Clean Cause contains 160 milligrams of better caffeine, and each sip supports recovery from alcohol and drug addiction. 50% of the profits go to assist people into sober living. Check out cleancause.com.
Hope. At Rosecrans, it's more than a wish. Hope has power. As the proven behavioral health leader in the Midwest, no other program offers our depth of experience and hope here at Rosecrans. And when someone you love struggles with substance abuse and mental illness, hope plays an important part in recovery. Life's got bigger plans for you. We should know. We're the most trusted name in treatment and the best choice for those who dare to hope. Visit us at rosecrans.org. Life's waiting.
Seaside Palm Beach is an executive luxury addiction treatment center located in Palm Beach, Florida. Our private clients come from all over the world, including business executives, professional athletes, celebrities, and more. Seaside Palm Beach offers first-class amenities and high-end accommodations, including a gourmet culinary experience, ocean views, pet-friendly facilities, and access to cell phones and laptops during your stay. If you or a loved one are struggling with addiction, please call us at 877-959-5053. Again, that number is 877-959-5053.
Now, glutathione is a big word, but it's the body's own master antioxidant. So it's a scavenger for free radicals, for bacteria, and what's relevant now, viruses. This is new to the marketplace. There's no other product on the market that has the ingredient NACET.
And basically NACET increases the production of that glutathione that is in our body already to strengthen and enhance our immune system and keep it strong. Elevated sense of well-being. Supports muscle strength and endurance. Cognitive function. Powerful liver support. Energy. Helps blood sugar regulation. Superior bioavailability of key ingredients.
One of your best defenses against COVID is a strong immune system. Taking GSH Plus as a daily supplement does all that. And now we have the product out on the marketplace.